Thank you for tuning in to The Real Tea with T3. My name is Tisha Harris. I'm the team leader of Texas Trio Team, and we have an amazing new episode for you today. But before we get started, we'll go around and I'll introduce my counterpart on the team. Who are you?
Michelle Duty. Nice to meet you.
And then we have a very special guest with us, but introduce who you are and what keeps you busy these days.
Awesome. James Rushing, founder of the Retention Experts, and helping the real estate world use gratitude and appreciation to grow their client retention and referral growth.
That is something that as a business owner and in real estate, that is so very important. But let's kind of rewind the tape a little bit. Take us back to the very beginning of like once you got through college and why you decided to do what you do.
Yeah. So Tisha, it's kind of cool. There's a guy named John Rulin. He wrote a book called Giftology that some have heard, some haven't. And, it's May of 2025 when we're recording. He actually passed away in August of 24. But before he passed, I was really close with John, had mentored with him, but he's the number one Cutco rep in the history of Cutco. I actually sold Cutco to put myself through college. And so, long story short, almost played football at Harvard. A lot of people don't know that, and wound up playing at Air Force, and then came home to A&M. So my time at A&M, I actually worked with Cutco the entire time, earning a Hall of Fame induction. So that's kind of how I started to meet all the agents and lenders, was doing closing gifts originally. And then fast forward after graduating debt free. So go Cutco, right? All in the sales world and helping people. I actually started the Retention Experts my senior year at A&M. And our first client was A&M's Office of the President with their donor retention and engagement. So kind of been in the Brazos Valley in some capacity ever since then. But took the Cutco straight into the Retention Experts. So
That's awesome. And so for people that don't know, Cutco is like a very special kind of gift that realtors can get their clients. It's a very high-end closing gift, which can be expensive for a lot of people.
It's an investment, right? It's definitely something you look at marketing, branding. One of the things I loved as I started to explore that contract and engagement was how do you actually take your appreciation and get your tax write-offs through advertising and marketing versus just the gifting. Of course, talk to your tax professional about that, right?
Yeah.
Disclaimer, but
I have to say I don't know what Cutco is.
So Michelle, we're always kind of looking at like when you're doing your appreciation, how do you put it in like a social setting for referrals? Hey, how do you get that, right? That gift comes up and it's like, oh, I got it from my agent, Michelle. And now you're in a referral setting. And so it's a really high-end American-made kitchen knife that we engrave all the information on for the agent. And it's there 20, 30, 40 years, can actually even get passed down generation to generation. So we work with a lot of, we have King Ranch agreements, we have Williams-Sonoma Incorporated, we have a wholesale agreement with them. So we work with 9 other vendors, but it all started learning a framework of having your appreciation in a referral setting, selling the silly knives, many moons ago kind of a thing. So.
Okay.
So what are some things that you learned from your mentor back then as far as how to engage with the client and maintain those relationships, no matter particularly what you're selling in a business, but like what are some things that are kind of universal with that?
Yeah, so John, it's an interesting story. He's done like 30 pro sports organizations. He's, gifted. He's wrote a New York Times bestseller. And honestly, the number one thing I learned from him was take care of the inner circle. He's made raving fans and advocates out of all of the executive assistants, like the receptionist, and it's really treat everybody equally because they are internal advocates of what you're trying to do. And so when I think we focus on real estate, that's going to be their family typically. So an example, right, would be like, can you give a closing gift that's maybe, if they have kids, maybe like tailored to their kids, but a non-consumable that's going to be used for a long time kind of a thing. So for example, like my girlfriend's kiddo, he lost some Nintendo Switch controllers, right? So part of the closing gift was some of the Switch stuff and a PlayStation gift card. She bought a Tecovas gift card for Amanda because she's now a permanent full-time Texas resident with that purchase. So for background, my girlfriend's moving into a house in a couple of days. And now she can go get her first pair of boots. So she'll have those boots, who knows how long, right? So, but treat the inner circle is kind of the long-winded answer.
So whenever you say inner circle, like break that down of what that looks like for an agent.
So the agent, it really just depends on who you're trying to retain and grow, right? So like if you're trying to grow a team, then who are the agent you're trying to recruit, who are their support circles? Their family, maybe their spouse, if they have an executive team, depending on the size of the team you're trying to recruit. For client retention, referral growth, it's going to be the family, maybe pets is a really not thought of idea, but it's that thoughtful thought, right? So it might be, for example, on a pet, it might be a custom collar with the new address.
Cute idea. I love
Like
that.
Right. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Cletus needs one of those.
He does. I love that idea. And it's so simple.
Yeah.
That is a simple one. We have done park benches. We collect park benches that people are either just getting rid of or at a garage sale, and then my husband refurbishes the park bench, and it's a front porch kind of gift.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of work. But I like and it's not branded. So you just taught me to put an etching or something on the gifts, and really, I guess that's way more public advertisement.
Yeah.
We'll just edit that out.
Well, and you hit a few points on that too, though, right? Like when you look at donors across the board, right? What do they normally want in return, especially at a university setting?
Tell us.
They want their name or somebody's
Yeah.
legacy of somebody else's name on that building, right? It's the number one thing that people love to see is their own name. And so we help our agents and anybody in the business world. It's not just real estate, right? Because we're all people and we all love to see our name. Like I'm actually at the third, and I'm kind of like, okay, but like it's cool when you see James Rushing the third on something, right? Or you see, made especially for. And Michelle, to your point, it's like the park bench is really thoughtful, but it takes a lot of effort. So having these systems in place, it's kind of a foreign concept to think about systemizing gratitude. But if your system is to give a gift in the kitchen, whether it's ABC or PDQ or cutting board or night, who cares, right? With their name on it, that's your system. They don't have to know that, right? I just finished a piece for the Montgomery County luxury realtors on planned randomness. It's the idea that we know it's coming and they don't. And so, when you look at real estate or any other business, there's cycles, right? And so real estate, let's just semantically call it a 60-day lead funnel. We know historically January is a really slow month. Going into the holidays at the end of the year are slow. We can go back to Halloween at the end of October. We can go to Thanksgiving, kind of the week before Thanksgiving, and say, hey, I'm thankful for you. Custom engrave everything, put a letter of the heart together, whatever it is, and you're driving leads for your 60-day funnel. So it is pure expression of that gratitude and appreciation, but there is some strategy to planned randomness, to, I've seen agents rent out the movie theater, right? Right before the kids get out of school. Well, yeah, it's a fun in like beginning of summer celebration, but it's also the hottest market in the entire cycle, right? So it has to be pure, but there is some strategy you can put on your marketing and retention efforts.
Yeah, and then it's going to depend on the agent and like geographically where you are and where you're servicing.
Yeah.
But I want to dive into, you said a 60-day lead funnel. Let's break this down into like you're brand new in the business, you have a large database, you have a large sphere.
Yeah.
What does that look like as far as getting organized in preparation for working with retention experts?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, where are you housing your contacts, right? And I think everybody, all three of us included, would be like, I don't know if I love my CRM, right? But we love being able to pull the data out of it and being able to actually look at things. So I'm sure we'd both agree, have a database if you can, but if you can't yet, being a new agent, at least start in a spreadsheet, right? And then just be able to dump everything out of your brain into one place. And then after that, depending on how many people are in the sphere and on that list, I would start to bucket it out, at least an A and a B or a 1 and a 2, because you can't hit everybody, so prioritize that.
Yeah. So as far as what you're doing, are you focusing on the A's and the A's, B's, or all of the database?
So I've pretty much worked with really mature businesses and organizations my entire career. What I'm trying to do is get one quality referral partner or client to introduce to other referral partners. So you can clone that entire portfolio of referral partners. But if it's a newer business that's starting up, or it's a newer agent, go to the people that already know, like, and trust you. And then I would personally get clear on what a great referral partner looks like, or who you think it might look like. And then go to the people that know, like, and trust you, say, hey, thank you for the support, or hey, I'm doing this new thing. Get referred from the person that already knows, likes, and trusts you to somebody else, and then bridge that gap from 1 to 2 first referral partner to a second one. Because it takes some time to build trust like that sometimes.
For sure. And so we've talked about where you came from, and you came from football, and then you really stepped into someone that really has the credentials and the acolytes that not a lot of people see.
Yeah.
And so is there anything from those stages that you remember now that help you as a business owner where you are today?
I think the biggest thing is actually the thing that's held me back the most, but putting a positive spin on it. I'm terrible about self-promotion. And if you have a reason for what you're doing and you can tie in other people into that, I won't get into this, but there's 6 core human needs. 1, significance. 2 is connection. And so if you can take, and I learned this in Cutco, but I didn't really understand it, getting referrals, down in the middle of Houston, right?
I am so into diving into the 6 if you want to.
Sure. But to answer the question succinctly, it's self-promotion, right? Nobody knows that our first client was A&M's president, that we did their top 200 owners for 2 years. Nobody knows that we've worked with the McNairs that own the Tex. Nobody knows it because I don't talk about it, right? But if I'm gonna sit in that seat in a boardroom, how are they gonna know that I can actually serve them if I'm not willing to say, hey, I've served organizations like yours, they've shared things like this. Does that resonate, or are you seeing something else? I don't have that seat at the table, right? So looking back, the number one thing I've learned is how to do it in a humble way that's hey, I can serve you because I've heard this, they've shared this. Is that you, or are you seeing something else, right? And then it's not about, look who I've helped. It's just I've heard this. Should we talk about this, or is there something else you want to talk about, right? Real estate, first-time home buyer. Hey, we work with a lot of first-time home buyers. We often hear questions around this. What are your questions that you have, right, when you're talking to a prospective buyer? So that kind of answer the self-promotion being the number one thing I've learned looking back.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard. I think sometimes people just want, they're very humble, and they just, to step into being on stage, as far as what they can bring to the table can be very daunting. So is that something that you struggle with too?
Entirely, and that's why I probably won't ever have a keynote speech. But I enjoy these podcasts. Maybe, right? But if I'm in a TED Talk, it needs to be very conversational with the audience. It's not going to be just me talking at people. But at the same time, the way I viewed this is, if I'm on a stage and I don't capture the recording and I don't push it out, then I'm only talking to the people in that audience. But this podcast on Real Tea is going to get to as many people as we can push this out to, right? So even if I'm on stage, it's still going to come back to pushing this out through other distribution channels. And I'd just rather be on a podcast, you and I and Michelle, and then it's the same thing. So we've got, 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 out to the mass versus, hey, I'm on a stage and it's all on me. Right? So you had mentioned the core human needs. I haven't looked at this in a while, but it's certainty and uncertainty are 2. This all comes from Tony Robbins. And if you know anything about this, you'll help me. But
You got it.
So certainty, uncertainty, significance, connection, and those are kind of your like non-spiritual needs per se. And then the other two are growth and contribution. And so a lot of people focus subconsciously on the four kind of more like core needs versus spiritual. And if you combine two of them, it hardwires that habit pretty significantly. And so, and if Tony ever hears this, which he probably won't, but
Hey, you never know.
fingers crossed, right? He really teaches if you can focus on the growth and contribution, then you're always going to be fulfilled and growing and giving back is a big thing. So we have this little equation, right? It's psychology plus data plus unique gifting equals incremental revenue. And I think a lot of times when somebody says, hey, I want to retain people, I want to grow relationships, how do I do it? They kind of turn to like, I want to appreciate them and all that. Maybe gift is one way to do it. But I think what they don't understand is kind of like an iceberg, right? You see the gift, you see, hey, I need to be thankful. Thank you for helping me get where I'm at. But it's really it's like the iceberg, right? They don't see all this other stuff underneath. But I think it's understanding core human needs, what actually does that. But the big thing is activating the law of reciprocity. It's a very subconscious thing, but it could be as simple as, hey, you hold the door and somebody says thank you. That's actually reciprocity right there. But nobody goes to this level of like, how do I actually make them feel special, significant, valued? And I think that's what they're actually missing. And it's not a totally difficult concept. We're just busy giving service in our business, not focusing on the business because we're so busy in it.
1000%. And that's a really, sometimes that can be a really big struggle for a business owner, is you're working so much to create and to have the brand awareness and do all of that. So you're working, in and on and working on that 50-50, and sometimes it's a lot more 75-25, all of that.
90-10?
Yeah.
95-5?
100-0.
Yeah. One of the first things we do, not everything we do is on a retainer, but the first thing for the larger retainer clients is actually pull apart their calendar. And I'm, hey, what are your 80-20 tasks, right? Like, ignore your calendar, but let's look at it for 1 second. Then, what are your 80-20 tasks that really move the needle? And where are those calendared in for you? But then after that, that's just week to week, right? I go monthly. What do you need to do? So in my business, right, I just like to look at our books myself. So I make it fun. I was an economics major. I don't love numbers, but it's Finance Friday. So the first Friday of every month, I go close our books, look at our P&L and all that, right? So that's a monthly task that needs to be done. Who have we onboarded? Who do we need to send, our appreciation gifts to? What podcasts were we on? Stuff like that. So that's weekly. Then there's the monthly that we just talked about, and then quarterly, right? And I literally make clients schedule out, right? It's like first Friday of every quarter, we look back at the whole quarter. And so it's on my calendar, and that way I don't miss the things that are in my business, like on my business. It pulls me out of being in it day to day so I can work on it. And that's, we have a mutual relationship, and I would actually run quarterly at his beach house. We would take the whole team down out of their house, out of their family, and go do a quarterly retreat. What was good? What do we need to work on? What do we want to work on next quarter? What were we working on this quarter? You just schedule it, right? It's going to happen at the end of every month, at the end of every quarter, whatever that is that you really need to do. But I work with a lot of people that don't understand urgent versus important.
That's rich. And so that was actually, you and I met, gosh, was that like 2 years ago?
About, yeah.
And whenever we did meet, I was so appreciative that there was somebody in alignment of calendarization and, matching people where you are, like with your schedule, and then like how appreciative you were of the same thing. Like,
yeah.
It was a big deal. Like, so do you struggle with that? Like, as far as independent contractors, like when you're like, hey, let's look at your calendar, and then it's like nothing.
What's a calendar? Hey,
Yeah.
do you have a link Because we had to reschedule this in Candace, right? And you were just like, yeah, go to my link, find it, and either schedule it or text me, right? And it's so much easier that way. Yeah, it drives me crazy. I sold, that's a me thing more than anything.
100%. I think it's the same thing with me as well. You know, some people have an amazing paper calendar they carry around with them, and that is their lifeline, you know, and then some people are very digital, and then some people are just winging it when they wake up.
Yeah, and I'm super digital, and my girlfriend's...
I don't know any of those people.
Nope. No. And my girlfriend's super manual, right? And that's the thing we're working on trying to figure out. It's like, okay, if it's in your calendar, paper calendar, that's fine. When can we sit down and look at it, right?
Yeah, and like my mentor, Tom Ferry, like that's what he says. If it's not in your calendar, it doesn't exist. Yeah.
At all, right? One of the biggest things that I've learned over the years of being a high performer, being around high performers, there's this concept of standards versus expectations. And if your expectations are higher than your standards or equal, you're going to be disappointed at all times in other people.
Conflict arises when expectations differ.
Yeah.
100%.
I'm going to butcher this one, but a mentor said the fastest way to ruin a relationship is unmet expectations. The fastest way to have an unmet expectation is an unspoken expectation. Speak your expectations, your relationships will be a lot better.
100%.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah. And it, you know, got to say, like, it takes a lot of trial and error because, like, you see it in your head, how you do things or how you operate, and then you're meeting somebody hopefully in the middle, but then sometimes because it's not outlined, it's chaos.
Well, and we're busy, right?
Yeah.
And so we think something, and we even think we thought we said something. It's like, okay, well, either I didn't say it or I said it, but I didn't say it in a way that they heard it.
Yeah. So going back to like when you're working with people, like they've thrown their name in the hat, like I'm going to need some help with this. And then you get to the point of like calendarization that may not be, you know, their top priority. Yeah. So like, how are you helping them navigate, you know, the 80-20 and like how you can assist them?
So like how could somebody kind of implement some of this stuff? Just chicken scratch, jot out, type out like the most important things that move your needle, right? And then there's an exercise I love called Big Rock, Small Rock, Sand. And there's a story to it that I won't go all the way into, but a university professor puts a jar on the desk, right? And he throws in all the sand at the bottom, and he throws in the rocks at the top, and he goes, is this full? And you know, the jar is this big, and the big rocks are up to here. And they're like, yeah, it's full. And he pulls out some small pebbles, and he throws it on top, and they fall through the big rocks, right? He goes, is it full now? And my favorite part of the story is he takes a beer and he pours it on top. And he goes, moral of the story is there's always time for a beer with your friend. But he does that jar first. There's actually two jars, right? So he started with the sand, then he put the big rocks in, then the pebbles. He takes a second jar out and he puts the big rocks in first. Big rocks, small rocks, sand, right? So that second jar, he then puts the small rocks in and then puts the sand in, and all the small rocks and sand filter in around the big rocks. Well, how does this relate to if I'm too busy to work in my business, right, and on it? Go ahead and jot down everything you need to do, right? And when I say everything, I would put categories down, right? Business, personal, if people have a strong faith, right? Routines around faith, energy, relationships, family. I would actually create categories around that and then list out everything that needs to be done. So when that list is all written out, typed out, go through that list and put big rock, small rock, or sand next to every single thing that needs to be done. And then what order should that go into your calendar? Right, do big rocks go first or do sand go first?
Big rocks.
Right, so you literally, your big rocks in your life, go put them on your calendar. It's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. Either one of y'all ever looked at your life and be like, oh my God, I'm gonna pull my hair out, I can't do all of this?
Never
Thought I don't have time, right? And one of the biggest things I've seen, just like a light bulb moment, is people, when they actually write it on their calendar, they see it all fit in.
And then once you actually get it in, like the time blocking of where things are, you realize how much time you can maneuver. and you hit the targets, the big rocks, those big things. But then once you hit those big rocks and make the income and you're knocking out all the goals, you create so much personal time to go take for self-care and for, you know, your family and things like that are they're most important.
Well, and then the whole nother topic of conversation, but creating leverage. Right? Once you have that disposable income, then take what you value your time at and hire somebody at a lesser hourly rate to do hourly rate tasks while you're working on big rocks. Because some of the small rocks, pebbles, sand don't have to be done, and if they do have to be done, they don't have to be done by you.
Yeah. So is that some of the things that retention experts can help, that your company
Yeah,
can
I
help?
mean, when it comes to just like appreciation, marketing plans, retention, like those are some things that are like, hey, let us take that off your plate, right? And I think the big thing, people look at gifting or appreciation as an expense, right? And it is when you look at your P&L. But if you actually look at ROR, return on relationships, the thing that once was an expense, you look at how much money you're making just by like having a more fun business to run, ultimately. And it's funny, people think like, oh, I'm giving this text, this gift, this letter from me to you, I really appreciate you. But what they actually find is it makes their business way more fun. And think of like holiday gifting, birthday gifting, right? Think of that gift that you've given somebody that they're exorbitantly joyful to receive. It gives the giver's heart more joy to see that than the gift itself actually did. I don't know, I'm off on a tangent, but
yeah, no, I mean, I think it's really important. And like, I think, you know, sometimes in real estate is like on one side, like you work so hard to get that one client, and, you know, or maybe you're working with a multifaceted of clients, and then just because you're so busy in the day-to-day that by the time it gets to the closing table, you've invested so much time and energy in so many other facets. I'm trying to think of the word that I want to use, but it's like, then you get to the closing table and it's like a gift card, and then that gets forgotten over time. In comparison to like you went the extra mile. Like I know at one point we were giving clients like boxes like during the transaction. Like, what is the word that I'm thinking of? It's like basically pieces throughout the duration rather than like wait till the very end. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Like
I actually literally created a talk on this last week. We call it mind mapping, journey mapping. And what we're helping people do is mind map their client experience.
Yes.
And
surprise and delight, it came to me, sorry.
Exactly, right, surprise and delight. But also, can you map where you choose to surprise and delight them? And like, I mean, you know, a transaction 85-95% is going to be the same, a little bit here or there different, but we've been around long enough. We know it's really exciting, it's a little fearful. It's exciting, it's really fearful, right? We know and can map this. So can we as a business owner overlay our client experience and surprising and delighting them right where their emotional highs and lows are?
And I would love to ask you this question just for your general feedback for being in this. Is one thing that I've like heard from a lot of experts is that whenever you're working with a client, when you have that first initial consultation, that maybe you should do a client intake form. That way you get to know them more from the front end, how to surprise and delight them throughout the process.
And a lot of people, we're people, right? So we're like, well, I don't need a form. Like, I'm just going to spend time with them and get to know it. Okay, but do you remember to ask the same questions? Do you remember what is most important to ask? And then my thing is, how do you merge people with technology? Because there's only one of all of us, right? And then the other thing is, and this is a little bit more advanced on the marketing side, how do you magnify your brand once you've built a brand? Oh, and by the way, we all have a brand whether we've built it or not. It's what people are saying about us when we're not there, but we are still trying to curate a brand. So it becomes difficult to magnify our brand if we don't have systems like that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, a profound message that I heard recently was, like, especially, like, people that are wanting to learn how to brand, like, they're conflicting marketing and branding a lot.
Totally different thing.
Yeah, and then, like, you
Completely.
just to simplify it, your brand is your reputation.
Yeah.
That is what it is.
Branding versus marketing, you hear marketing and sales. But then in a company, it's marketing and sales run together. But marketing and sales are totally different. If you have great marketing and branding, you really don't need to sell. And that's when people start coming to you versus you start chasing. You had mentioned, I forgot what you had said. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just, like, so important that, like, that you are what you are selling. Like, whenever you go out, and I think that's why, like, my people might think I'm a little nuts when it comes to this, but it's like, you will never see me in my pajamas going to the grocery store or anything like that. Whereas some people, it works really great for them. Like, that's their people and things like that.
But I think that's why sometimes you and I struggle with, like, hey, this is our standard and we expect that, and then people are above, below, and then, like, I've had to manage, well, like, then don't get disappointed because I had a sky high expectation. But all that to say, like, when I think of you, and I don't mean this in a brown nosed way, I'm like, you are one of the more professional, like, I don't actually work with real estate agents anymore. Because when you were like, hey, when we're talking about that, you're like, well, do you struggle with it? I actually sold my 180 agent business off during 2020 because I wanted to work with people that treat their business like a business. And so that's one thing I've always respected, the calendaring, hey, this came up, life happens, right? Okay, no big deal. Hey, go back, we'll find it. I got a text from this automated system about in all the years I've done podcasts, I've never got a text reminding me about a podcast appearance.
With the location and everything?
Yeah, and that speaks, right? It's wrapped in experience. And you understand, I'm just going to call it client experience.
So going back to, like, what you're saying as far as an intake form.
Yeah.
If you could tell a real estate agent or a business owner, when is the perfect time to submit that to someone to gather the information?
And one thing I'll do at the end of the podcast, we'll wrap back. I have zero issue just giving any listener our intake form. So I just throw that out there. Don't let me forget to come back how to get that at the end. But I like casual, it's like, hey, I want to send you something as a thank you. You can even just phrase it as like, do you mind throwing your address in there? Now, of course, it's going to have a couple more questions about mailing address and, kids, where'd you go? So what's on ours, right? And again, I'll give, if you're listening to this, I'll give it to you. But it's, spouse, where'd you go to school? Are sports important? Who do you cheer for? Do you have an Apple or an Android phone? Pets, right? But when, I don't think when's is as important. It's more of like how, right? Because it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. So if it's about, hey, I just want to, appreciate you more, or say thank you for your time, I think it's about the delivery of how you actually deliver. Will you fill out this form? Because I'm like, Michelle, will you fill out this form for me? Like, I got, how many pages are in a truck contract? I got a lot of pages to fill out, right? But if it's like, hey, I want to send you something as a thank you, would you mind throwing your address in here? Yeah, sure, I'll throw in 7 more answers for you because I want to know what we're curious, right? We don't expect a gift, but it's like, ooh, like, what is this, Okay, cool, now I'm going to bury a few other things in that intake, right?
Yeah, I just think, like, on a purchasing side, like, because that's something that we tried for a while, but, like, whenever you have someone that's going in on a purchase side, they're getting, even the selling side, they get so inundated with their own paperwork that they've got to do, plus their own day-to-day life that they're dealing with, like, so tossing in, like, hey, you'll get something.
Sedate to them significantly before any of that stuff starts.
Yeah.
So what I'll say is like, hey, I want to love on our most important people. Do you mind throwing your address in this real quick?
So if they never get anything,
Well, see, that's the thing, right? If you tell them, like, we have to follow through. And that's alignment, whether it's paperwork, brand promises, but just follow through on what we say we're going to do, right?
Yeah.
Now, sometimes I won't do it right there so it doesn't feel tit for tat. I will add them to the list, and they're gonna be like, well, I never got anything. Well, they are actually scheduled to get it. It's just gonna come in November to say, hey, I'm grateful for you, right? So I think that's one thing a lot of agents or even transactional businesses, which transaction versus client, that's a whole nother story we can get into, which you were mentioning, you know, the boxes and stuff. I had a thought there. But it's the lifetime value of your relationship isn't done when that transaction closes, right? It's actually the beginning of the rest of y'all's relationship.
Right.
So, you know, that when we're talking about client experience, giving the box, stuff like that, what does that, and there's a guy named Joey Coleman, he wrote an incredible book. Do y'all read audiobooks at all?
She's audio.
I think it's on both. So, Never Lose a Customer Again by Joey Coleman. It actually walks through the 8 steps of creating a happy client, even a prospect before they're even a client. Prospect journey to happy client. And most businesses go, well, I have a happy client, I'm done. That's really not worth anything to your business other than a good review. Right? And so the reason I'm sharing any of this is I think most businesses lose, if they do look at client experience, they lose that transaction closed. How do I turn that transaction into a lifetime client or a happy client into a raving fan? And the 8th step in those of Joey's book, Never Lose a Customer Again, is raving fan. And so it kind of actually changes. Joey writes about this where you have to take the ownership of the relationship, because who normally owns that relationship in real estate? The client or the realtor?
I would say the realtor.
The realtor, right? But if that buyer or seller is going to become a raving fan, they actually have to take ownership of the relationship, especially after closing. It's a really interesting topic, but it comes back to that reciprocity and stuff like that.
I've heard of that book several times. Like, I need to read it, you know, for sure.
It's got a fun cover, by the way. It's got a little red balloon on it with a smiley face, so kind of goofy.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, when you say that you're working on, like, these relationships, like, for the longevity and, like, you know, retention of referrals and things like that, like, how often is it that you're, like, sending those things and engaging with those individuals to add into your calendarization?
I think a lot of people hear this and they're like, oh man, let's go do it. And then they actually overdo it. And it becomes expected and it loses its wow factor. What I found is about once a quarter. So I was just building this thing out that's like 3 or 4 ideas per quarter. But if let's just say, you know, there's a letter of the heart and it's like a little bit more personal than a regular newsletter. It's like a newsletter from the heart kind of a thing. Let's say you do something like that once a year, maybe twice a year. I kind of take a circle and I'll slice it gift, personal touch. So you'll go gift, personal touch once a quarter. So they'll get a gift every like 6 months and a personal touch.
So when you say personal touch, is that
I'm
like...
going to go back so we can just edit.
No, you're fine.
So I'll take that circle, right, and I'll slice it, gift, personal touch. So they're getting something every single quarter, but it's a different type of touch. So it might even be a custom-made video on St. Patty's Day saying, you know, Tisha and Michelle, I'm really lucky to have you. Thanks for having me on the podcast show, right, on the podcast. And then you just split out the gifts.
So I'm so glad that you said that, because it brings up a really good point. Like, over the past couple of years, like, AI has just really like exploded as far as like, but I think people are using it, but they aren't like using it unless you've been doing it for a really long time. But one of the biggest things that you can start doing is your videos. And so when you start dealing with a database or a clientele that is so maximum, like, are you implementing like the AI tools so you can voice over, or is it still very interpersonal?
I wouldn't say I'm anti-AI. I just want to make sure that when we're using AI, it's leveraging something, right? Because all AI can do is take stuff that's already out there and give it back to you. It's a computer. So it's scanning databases and pulling out information and sending it back to you. So there's not a ton of like creative personality branding, but I think AI is incredible when you learn to train it, how to sound like you, how to magnify your brand. I tell people that all the time when it comes to working with the retention experts. I can't magnify anything of yours until you're clear on who you are and what you are, because I'm just writing something off brand for you if we're not clear on that, right? Even, I don't know if anybody listening to this has a brand language document or like brand identity, but we will take that and write your thank you notes based on your brand languaging, right? I can feed something like that into AI all day. But with AI, I really think it's about magnifying who you are, not just getting more done. And I would say the biggest thing with AI is how to magnify what's already in you and your brand. And I wouldn't take AI and do it. Like, there's a brand, Synthesia. I can literally, we're working on creating a course and serving more people. I could literally write out the entire course, get an AI generated thing, and have them literally just do the whole course. But now you're not going to get the touch from me and my team. And now I'm sitting here preaching authenticity and alignment, and now I'm not aligned. They want you, right? We can talk about all of the roll-ups of the big real estate companies and the technology and the access. But what I really think it's actually doing is, in a real estate transaction, the agent used to do almost everything, right? And so, I mean, y'all tell me, but I think some buyers and sellers are like, why am I paying this full 3%? Like, I did 85% with technology. So I think it's leaving agents going like, well, what is my actual value, right? And I want to hear this, but what I think it's doing is, instead of meeting a buyer at the top of the funnel or a seller, I think you're actually getting a more qualified, educated, maybe misinformed sometimes, buyer in the middle of the funnel or the bottom of the sales funnel where they're ready to go. Does that resonate?
Yeah, and I think one of the things is, like, going back to what you said a minute ago, if you don't know who you are and your purpose, then there really is no fight in the game as far as defending, like, or offending, like, like the things that you are able to do for the client. And that takes a lot of time to determine, you know, what specifically are you doing that nobody else does.
Back to branding again.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
And I think, and I don't want somebody listening, and I don't want somebody listening to this to hear James said don't use AI, right?
Oh, like, sure.
Use AI to leverage what you're already intentionally doing by all means. But when we're coming back to client experience and branding, map that out, right? When you're sitting down with somebody, say, hey, when you work with us, here's what we do different. Here's where our client, because you can do most of it. Address the elephant in the room. You can do most of this yourself this day with technology, with AI, with research, right? So do you want to do that, or do you want the concierge service where this is intake form type stuff, right? Do you want to do most of it and bring it to me when you have a question? Do you want me to do most of it and bring it to you for your thoughts and approval?
Right.
A or B.
Yeah.
Right?
And well, and I've seen really great like presentations that have been done in the past, like on a listing presentation side, is like, yeah, we know you, Mr. Client and Mrs. Client. We know you're more than capable, and we're willing to meet you where you are. It's either, do you want a gold service, silver, or do you want a bronze? Like, so I mean, we can do all of them.
Yeah.
You know, but which one are we going to do?
Yeah, of course. That's one of the things. It's a funny story, going back to Cutco super briefly. Before I had a Hall of Fame, like, again, bad self-promotion, right? I've sold $1.2 million of Cutco knives to 1,200 people. Why do I share this? And I probably should have shared it earlier. I built a referral-based business, right? When I was 19, all the way through college. My dad was like, you're not going to like this. You're not going to like sales. He had been in software sales. Well, I've never felt like I've sold a day in my life, right? So for an example, anybody listening to this, without selling So anybody listening to this without selling, I can say, hey, we got 2 things I think will be valuable to you. This plan randomness thing or the mind map of a home. Which one's more valuable to you? Now I'm not selling, I'm just here to help you. What do you want or need help with?
Right.
And that can go in those intake forms or in your listing presentation. Another great one that I would put on a form is, how do you prefer to be communicated with, right? How do you prefer to communicate? And, I think a lot of people have heard of the golden rule. I teach the platinum rule. I don't care how I want to be communicated with. It's not about me. And the golden rule is treat others the way they want to be, or the way you want to be treated. No, I teach the platinum rule. Treat others the way they want to be treated. I can communicate any way other than email, pretty much. Slack preferred, right? Mm-hmm. But, voice note me, call me, video, whatever you want, right? But hey, what do you prefer?
Yeah, that's actually like one of the very first questions we ask, like when a customer reaches out, and that's because, yes, they reached out via phone that time, but it might have been just a convenient thing at that very moment. So make note of that way, because sometimes, like whenever you're working on lead generation and that 60-day funnel, if you're calling somebody over and over and over, you've never asked, and they don't answer, and you feel like, you're discouraged, they didn't answer me, well, maybe their best method was text, and they just were off of work that day,
Well, and I believe in outreach, it needs to be multi-channel.
Call, text, email, all of that, yeah.
And maybe even at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have technology these days. You want to talk about like AI and technology and stuff like that. Record a voicemail drop that's your voicemail and send it to 70 people. Mm-hmm. Some people don't know about ringless voice drops. Like their phone rings once and all of a sudden they have a voicemail. I can send the same person the same message, but it's my voice. That's way more personal at scale, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, and that's a big one. Like if you're wanting to do just listed, just sold marketing, like you're calling everybody in the neighborhood with the same message, like congratulations, you got a new neighbor, da 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 da, and we sold it in this many days. Like it is something. I mean, there's so much technology at our fingertips that just need to be tapped into or just learned about. And so things like this, us talking about it brings the awareness. But it has to leverage know, like, trust, the personality, the voice. And I forget what the number is, but it's like when you look at communication, like it's like 82 or 90% of communication is not really what you're saying. It's not actually
nonverbal. Nonverbal communication is huge.
Body language, cadence, all kinds of stuff, right? And we lose that a lot of times when we're not clear on how we're trying to communicate and what we're really trying to get across. It just becomes robotic through technology and AI. It loses the person. Everybody likes to say in sales and relationships, are you in B2B, business to business, or are you in B2C, business to to consumer, right? I'm like, guys, we're all in H to H, human to human. I don't care if I'm making a business decision or for my family or my house. Like, I'm still a person. Appeal to that H to H.
How do you feel about drip campaigns? We have differing opinions on this.
I mean, not to not answer the question, I'm just a huge proponent of testing. A/B test. Like, if it's working, great. If you're not getting the open rates and the click-through rates and the conversions that you want, go test something else.
I think it's really dependent on the sphere or the clientele base.
And I can tell you right now,
because I think you have great results from drip campaigns.
Yeah, but I mean, like, for example, just to throw out an analytic here is, I was honestly reluctant of a newsletter for so long, like just like a monthly newsletter, and I'm in coaching, and so they were like, you really should implement it. It's just one simple thing, and so we've started doing it, and I've watched the analytics, and it was a 96% open rate. Yeah. Like over 1,000 people had opened it, and it's like, holy cow.
Now, see, to me, that's different than a drip campaign, but I guess it is the same, but that particular, our newsletter doesn't feel like spam. It doesn't feel like spam to me at all. Well, it's personal.
And here's the other thing, is like delivery method.
Yeah.
Because when everybody, to my knowledge, might be wrong, but when everybody thinks newsletter, how do you send it out?
Email.
Email.
Is that the only way? Throw it on Facebook.
Ooh. Carrie,
Make it a post.
Because
Make it a post.
Because
Yeah.
to your point earlier, you might have called me and I don't know why you called me. Maybe you called me because this other business, I just filled out a contact form, never heard from them, and filled it out a second time and still never heard from them. Whereas Texas Trio Team may read their submissions 3 times a day. So I'm frustrated at this other instance that happens. I picked up the phone and called, but I don't really want you to call me back. I'm in 7 meetings today. I want a text message, but you don't know that.
Yeah.
But my behavior indicated I wanted a phone call back. And so I'm just going to flip back and forth for a second. Like, people in marketing, like, you look at, what do y'all use? Like Constant Contact
use her.
or HubSpot or...
I play the 5th.
Okay. So a lot of people look through click-through rates, right? And then they get disappointed when somebody unsubscribes.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. I looked at that and it was like 11, which I wasn't like, but then I looked at who it was and I was like, makes sense, you know?
But what is that really actually telling you, though? And it's not that they don't want to hear from you.
Either they're inundated with information already, that's one thing, or just they're no longer in the position to want that kind of content.
Yep. So buyer's journeys, right? They might not want that content. That's a very valid point. The other thing is that might just be them saying, I don't want any more emails.
Right.
That same person that unsubscribes from your email might show up to your egg hunt.
Oh, well, yeah, exactly. And that's like the thing of like, even though they unsubscribe, that doesn't mean that they're deleted out of the database, you know?
We will still fub you.
Right. And it doesn't mean I don't want to hear from you. It just means I don't want that form of communication that I unsubscribed from.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
So the guy that texted me stop yesterday, I can just call him instead of, okay.
Yeah.
I put him in trash. I was like, he said stop.
And when I talk to like new agents or struggling agents, and they take things so personally, so like, oh, they told me to stop, and it's like, because maybe they're already getting, would you like our health insurance? And like, how many calls are they getting that are spam during the day? 100%. I align
Or
with
they
that.
just knocked their flower vase off and broke the roses that they were really excited about and were in a bad mood.
Or maybe, yeah.
knows?
They had all their kids in the car, and they're just like, just make it stop.
Yep.
You never know.
Yeah, and literally, I mean, we know autoresponders these days. It's so easy and that's why personal brand is important, right? Let's take that exact scenario. Whatever, was it a templated text or marketing that you got to stop to?
No, it was just a reach out.
Yeah. But see, that's the thing, right? Like, if you know you're going to reach out similar ways, pre-cut a video. And like, even though it's on a drip from the CRM, it's not going to feel like that sometimes. And yours might have been. I don't know this whole situation. But if you pre-cut those videos at every stage of the journey, it feels way more personal.
Yeah.
Over enough touches, you're going to see that opt-out rate drop significantly.
And you know, I'm so glad that you said that. Is like last week I got a video and it was really strange. Like the name that it came from was like not saved in my phone, but it showed the name and it was a video.
Maybe or whatever, yeah.
Well, it just showed us as if it was a contact in my phone, and it was not. And then the sales rep that it came from was a video, and I'm like, I have no idea who this is. But the thing was, she was selling me something that I had absolutely zero interest in, so I immediately marked as spam. But I was like, good approach, but maybe something different to actually engage with me first, human-to-human contact.
I think a big thing that's come up in our conversation is segmenting the journey, right? Like, depending, and you have to be able to work on your business first and to do anything we're about to talk about. But when we talk about top of funnel, middle of funnel, client raving fan, bottom closed funnel, whatever, that's a different buyer's journey and experience. Said in a different way, I would never put my top 40 relationships and referral partners on just a drip.
Yeah.
I'd get fired by 28 to 40 of them immediately.
That's the way because most of my sphere is relationships I've had for over 20 years.
Yeah.
If they start getting spam from me, a drip, campaign, they're not going to want to talk to me.
They'll actively disengage.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
But that's why one of the first things we said was, and we didn't get into it too much, but you said if you're talking to a new agent, it's not necessarily a new agent, it's somebody that hasn't really sat down to look at database marketing. But what are we coming back to? We're coming back to client experience. Let's just call it user experience, right? You've got to segment that. And it doesn't have to be some fancy thing with a marketing degree and a master's in that. It's like, hey, these are my A's, these are my really important, these are, hey, I would really like to not lose that relationship. And then these are like, I don't care whether you open this or unsubscribe or send 3 people to join the newsletter. And I think that's where you've done a really great job, is like your mass marketing on your drips and stuff like that. And it just depends, right? Like if one agent's style is to farm 20 to 60 key important relationships, another agent really likes mass technology and then building a relationship. What that's really actually saying is, hey, I want to work with people that are mid to low funnel, ready to go, that know, like, and trust me. And then the other agent saying, I want to market to a lot of people and get a ton of impressions and marketing, and maybe your time's right, maybe it's not, maybe you would have said stop and unsubscribe, but instead you like the person, so you're like, I'm going to use them next time. And it's just a different way of marketing, really.
And that's why some agents are phenomenal at doing open houses and doing those things, whereas some are online lead generation. It just depends on where you are in what kind of business. It goes back to who are you, what do you want, and why do you want to do it?
Exactly.
I helped somebody write a talk at a national convention last month, and one of the questions was on mentorship. How do you find a good mentor? And the number one thing that I told her was like, you need to go find the mentor. You will understand the difference in coaching versus mentorship, first of all, right?
Amen. Yeah.
And then I said, and if you go that route and you really want to mentor, you need to find somebody that's done the thing you want to do in the manner that fits your personality, or you're never, no matter how great of a coach or mentor they are, going to implement and be satisfied if you implement it. So you have to learn to market the way that you want to actually run your business, because people, like, the niches are in the riches, right? And people are like, well, if I niche down, or if I only market this way, or I only market to that type of property or that type of whatever, they think they're going to cut down their options of who they can work with. It's actually totally opposite. Because what happens is people go, oh, they're like me, they know, like, and understand me, I want to work with them. And now you get attraction marketing.
I know we could talk about all of this for days and days.
My mind is,
I know.
I feel deep.
Before I forget, or before we forget to do it, where can people get that form from you?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing, not only can they get the form that way, but just content that we're pushing out with very little AI to no AI. Go to the social media platform that you're on the most and message me. Just search the retention experts. It'll be really easy to find. We're branded the same across every single platform. So I'd say probably Instagram or Facebook. Just search the retention experts and then message me the word realty. And then I can get you either one of those things that's more valuable to you. The other thing we're working on right now, called the relationship analysis. It's a deep dive of how much money is being left in a database and in your client experience, where it's being left, systems needed to capture all that, and it's called the relationship analysis. So if you're listening to this and you want to look at, like, what am I leaving on the table and where, go to social media, find the retention experts, and again, Realty, when we start the conversation there, just message me Realty. But it's called the relationship analysis, and that's where a lot of people are starting these days. So
that is awesome. Thank you so much for being on with us today, and I'm very hopeful that people reach out, because that's just a plethora of information that can really help people build their income and have a lot more to look forward to.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So if you want to reach out to us, if you have any questions, you can find us at texastrioteam.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care and keep living your best life.